What's up, everybody? Welcome to another 6-1 Showcase Dev interview. My name is Kyle from the 6-1indie side of things, and today we are joined with a bank from the Wild Gentlemen, creators of the Chicken Police Into the Hive. Bank, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about your game, but before we get into Chicken Police and everything that goes into making such a stylish game, tell us about yourself and your history of a as a game developer.
Yeah, so I'm Bank B. Varga, the writer, designer, and creative director of the White Gentleman game development studio, and also I'm one of the founding members of the team. So how does it start? So I came into game development from the creative side, from the artistic side, mainly as a writer. I wrote comic books, short stories, even a novel before ending up in game development. And then I became a narrative designer, which led me to become a game designer in the end. And now I'm the creative director of all our projects within the White Gentleman.
That's awesome. A quick follow up, and I know I didn't send this over to you, but um, what's do you like being in charge of everything, or do you prefer just being like just the narrative designer?
Both has its positives and
Yeah.
negatives. So
Hmm.
I'm more like a background man. I
Gotcha.
love being in the background and just wrote stuff. But I needed to grow up uh, for this job to be a leader too. So I'm
Fair.
leading the full creative team of the project, all the artists, all the narrative designers, the writers, everything. So yeah, it's a hard thing, but I tend to love it
Awesome.
nowadays. So yeah, quite
Great.
fond of it.
That's great. Where did the inspiration come from the original Chicken Police game? Because it's looking at it, I don't think a lot of people have seen something like that before. So I'm
Yeah.
just wondering where it came from.
Yeah, just that's the most usual question, but I don't think I ever answered it the same way twice because because even the story how I came up with the idea is also strange a little bit.
Hmm.
So Chicken Police is this story heavy film noir style adventure game set in a world populated by all these anthropomorphic animals. We call this word the wilderness. So the basic idea was inspired by a YouTube video actually, where two real roosters breaking up a pair of fighting rabbits on somebody's backyard, and I thought it was funny and quite surreal, and
Hmm.
that essentially the roosters could be like the policemen of the animal kingdom or something like that. So the little spark of an idea was already in my head, and I started thinking a lot about it. And since I'm a huge film noir and hardboiled detective fiction fan, and of course I love games like Grim Fandango, Discord Noir, and etc. There was no question that this had to be the this real gritty hard-boiled noir story, but with animals and this unique setting we started to create for it. And yeah, the rest almost came naturally. I first came up with the two protagonists of our story, Sonny and Marty, and their cocky relationship and the chemistry between them, all that stuff. But in the end, we created a completely unique world around the game with its own history, religion, cultures, and everything that goes with it. So you could say that the little spark of an idea has pretty much outgrown itself in the end, and it created something that it is much more than just a game.
Awesome. What is your favorite film noir film?
Well, that's a hard question. I think my favorite is Detour or
Okay.
or Gilda or The Big Sleep or
Yeah,
or the
that's
Third
fair.
Man. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love almost all the classic 40s era film noirs. So
that's
yeah.
awesome. I haven't heard of many, and as you can tell behind me, I love movies. So I gotta write those down to check them out. Um,
Sure.
was there always a sequel in the cards for Chicken Police, or was that decision made like after the original game's launch?
Both, because I had planned several episodes for the Chicken Police series in advance. Uh, and for example, there are already vague hints of the sequel in the first game, but it was always in the cards that the first one wouldn't be successful enough and we
Mm,
couldn't do a sequel at all. So while there are links between the games, each Chicken Police story stand on its own legs. So we created them in a way that each one is a unique story, especially because we didn't know it will be a hit or not. But luckily, the first one was successful, so we could start thinking about the sequel very quickly. Um, what we wanted to do what we wanted to do differently or totally the same way but better. Fortunately, apart from the new story and characters, we didn't have to alter too much things because people love the style, the execution, the quality of the first game. So we just needed to maintain that and crank up everything from 10 to 11 basically.
that's awesome. And going into that style, what is the appeal for that hyper realized depiction of the animal kingdom in your games?
Yeah, I think after the basic idea of this animal noir adventure, the most important step was to find the final style of the game. Because
Hmm.
before this hyper realistic photo manipulation stuff, it was pixel art. There was a pixel art version. There
Hmm.
was some classically drawn iterations of the game. But finally, almost accidentally, like I mocked up a human body with an animal head and just said, yes, this is what we need. So because we saw that that's something totally new, strange, and unique, and we searched for something like that for the game uh, to be elevated with a full level.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy you landed on it because I love the style and the look of this. It's awesome.
Thanks.
Um, when writing these characters, especially them being animals, do you put any restriction on yourself when writing them, or you just let your imagination go wild?
Uh, I think only limits are the word itself we created for the game. So
Hmm.
this word has its own rules, how society works, how animals cope with racial differences, predation, cannibalism, and all other divisive issues. These are important topics and also great conflict triggers for me as a writer. So they are very easy to play with, but outside of these internal rules the world itself has, which are set by us, obviously, there are essentially no boundaries and you can let your imagination run totally wild, pun intended. Uh, in the first game, I can even say that we were a bit more cautious and restrained, but the sequel will be much wilder, much adventurous, bold, and way more visceral experience. So, and this is true for the characters too. They will have much more conflict with each other, much more emotion, deeper and yet funnier relationships, and of course, much more dialogue, which revolves around these very controversial topics, which can only exist in this animal world.
Hmm.
So yeah, it has some restraints, but I think on the contrary, it gives you much freedom because of the whole animal aesthetic stuff.
Nice. Yeah. Um, what goes into making a good detective story? Because in my eyes, if I think about writing a detective story, I'm afraid of showing my hand too early and too clearly. So, how do
Yeah.
you handle that when it comes to writing this?
Uh, Good question. I have no idea. Never had. Essentially, for me, it's always about the characters and the
Hmm.
relationships between them. Far more important than, for example, the intricate crime itself. we are trying to solve as the player. So of course that's important too, but it's just the background, just the
Hmm.
stage on which the actors shine, basically. In our case, the characters and their great voice actors who breathing life into them, they are the actors, and the case itself, the story, the narrative structure is like the stage for them. So I always thought about that way. Every crime story is great when your characters are great. So I just like to create an exciting basic situation,
Hmm.
a good and understandable motivation for the characters. That's super
Hmm.
important. And the rest will come naturally. The scenes almost write themselves if you have the right setting for them, which in our case is a well crafted world
Hmm.
and a sufficiently interesting opening act for the story.
Awesome. One of the big updates in the sequel into the Hive is more color in the game. What were the challenges behind translating this gritty detective noir world into some full color sections?
Yeah. Making the color mode was a pretty risky move,
Hmm.
actually. Or we didn't know how the old fans will react to that, because
Hmm.
new players who never saw the first game, for them it's just a nice little option to have. But for the hardcore fans, we were a little bit concerned what they would say about it, but they all loved it. And after all, color mode is just an option, so it's not a
Right.
mandatory thing. Uh, but it's an option we wanted to include in the first game too, actually. But we just didn't have the capacity and time
Hmm.
and manpower to do it. But to be honest, it's better this way, because the color mode is not just a gimmick or an advertising trick or
Yeah.
something like that. But it has a narrative significance too. So one of the main messages and storylines of the second game is letting things go. It's about overcoming the past and moving on. In a sense, it's the recovery of hope from a point where we feel that we never came back. And this is what our hero is experiencing, and the colorness is a metaphor for that, or the color mode is a metaphor for this change of heart
Hmm.
our main protagonist has. So it's the metaphor for a recovery of hope, but also it's a nice addition, and players actually can see everything in full color, which is super cool. So
Hmm.
even the most hardcore noir fan players who played the game or played the demo, who played the game in the noir mode, even them just checking what the color mode looks like, and what the
It's great.
characters and the places looks like. So even for them, it's a nice extra addition.
That's awesome. Between Chicken Police, Zips Cafe, and Moses and Plato Last Train to Clawville, it seems you have an affinity towards featuring humanoid animals in your games as the characters. Are there any benefits for writing for animal characters instead of humans, or are they fairly similar in your eyes?
Actually, this whole animal thing happened almost by accident, because
Hmm.
we created such a complex world around chicken police that we simply had to create several different stories in it. So we started to expand this world with more games and more stories. But I wouldn't say it easier or better
Hmm.
to write animal characters than normal human ones. For other projects, I write about human characters, and the feeling is kind of the same. Still, the animal nature gives you a good mask to hide behind, and of course
Hmm.
gives you a lot of unique story or character development elements. And it's also fun to joke around with, obviously,
Yeah.
with the animal puns and all that stuff. And satire also works much better with animal characters, in my opinion, simply because by abstracting these animal figures a little bit from ourselves, when they act human, do human things, it becomes way more shocking and more present and more obvious, especially because they are not human. So this contrast can work very well. Um, and this can be an amazing tool in the hands of a good writer. So I think if someone understands how to use the animal aesthetic for their advantage, it can work really great.
Awesome. And our final question, before I let you go rest because it's late for you, um, we've been asking everyone of these devs that we get to talk to in the interviews, what does indie mean to you? And let me preface that by saying there are no wrong answers. So whatever it means to you is what it means.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, nobody knows what indie
Yeah,
means.
exactly.
Actually, but
Mhm.
that's why it's an interesting question. Being an indies, I think it's reflected by attitude of the team members.
Mhm.
For the indie developer, game development is not just a job. It's like a way of life, no matter how cliche that sounds.
Mhm.
And for me, a good indie developer is someone who takes the project's fate to heart and who is able to sacrifice things for something he or she is creating, for something that feels like his own. So that's an important part, that you need to feel the project, the game you're working on, like your own baby, your own
Mhm.
child. So I think indie is not about the size of the team or even the budget behind the project. It's more like about the spirit and the attitude towards game development. For me, the most important trinity, so to speak, in indie game development is self-expression, artistic values, and the urge to experiment with feels, styles, or genres.
Mhm.
Something we very rarely can say about AAA gaming nowadays, sadly. But that's the main power in indie games and indie development, in my opinion.
That's awesome. It was beautiful. Yeah. Bank, thank you so much for joining us and talking about Chicken Police into the Hive. Like I
Thanks for
said, we're
having me.
very grateful to be able to show it off to the world a little bit. For anyone watching, if they want to keep up to date on the development progress of Chicken Police and any of the other games that you guys at the Wild Gentleman are working on, where can they go find that info?
Yeah, obviously we have normal websites, but
Hmm.
yeah, nowadays websites are also starting to become a rare thing.
Yeah, they're like
But
fossils.
yeah, yeah, but obviously we are on Twitter or X, sorry, Facebook, and all the social platforms you can think of. So just search for Chicken Police or White Gentleman, and you will find us.
Awesome. And as always, you can go hit up 61indie.com/showcase, where you can find all the links to the socials for Chicken Police there, as well as the other games that we showed off today. Um, if this is the first interview you're watching or the last one, there's plenty more to check out. So please go find all the other interviews and, of course, watch the showcase. And as always, we love you and play more indies. Talk to you soon.